Hey guys, welcome to another video from Chrono24 in New York City. I'm Thomas, Private Client Advisor here, and today we are talking about affordable alternatives to popular Patek models. Now, before we get into that, I should make an announcement that Chrono24 is doing a giveaway for $10,000 towards your next purchase. Full details are in the description below, so check that out. Because not everyone is on a Patek Philippe level budget, myself included, we're going to be going over some affordable or relatively affordable alternatives to 5 categories today. We're going to be covering time-only dress watches like the Calatrava, chronographs, calendar complications, as well as popular sport models like the Aquanaut and the Nautilus. So let's hop right in. First up, let's run through some affordable alternatives to Patek's bread and butter, which is time-only dress watches. Think the Calatrava, for example. Now, one brand that immediately comes to mind is Piguet, and it's not the last time you'll hear that name in this video. They have a rich history, very similar to that of Patek, one of the founding fathers of modern watchmaking. A lot of really good details here, great proportions, very dressy, and it's one of those watches, the more you look at it, the more you see. A Piguet Classique, for example, is a nice time-only dress watch that could run you somewhere between 10 to 20, depending on how intricate and how well finished you want to get. They make really good watches, and I think Piguet has been slept on recently, but I see that changing in the next 5 or 10 years or so. Now, if the Piguet is not your thing, or if you want to find something even more affordable, I would recommend Grand Seiko. It's a brand from a different era, from the other side of the world, but they really capture that Patek ethos in their dedication to craftsmanship, their attention to detail, and their well-proportioned simplicity that you find here. Probably my favorite Grand Seiko for this category is going to be the SBGK007. It's got a very well-curved, well-arched case architecture. The dial has just enough going on to keep it interesting with the sub-seconds and the power reserve. It's a layout you don't see it very often, but it's very well done on this watch. I would also, of course, point you to one of their classic, well-executed dials, like the Snowflake, like the Cherry Blossom, like the Birch. It's still simple, it's still well proportioned, but it gives you something very pretty to look at every time you check the time. All right, next up, let's run through some alternatives to Patek watches with calendar complications. If you're looking for a 5035 or a 5015, you can actually find those in the low $20,000 range. But if you want to get a more well-known model like a 3940, you're going to have to shell out at least $40,000. Luckily for us, there are other prestigious watch brands doing perpetual calendars for half the price. Top one that comes to mind is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Control Perpetual Calendar. With these, you get a very intricate in-house movement from the watchmaker's watchmaker. JLC is one of the top movement makers in the game and have been since their creation over 100 years ago. With this, you get a true perpetual calendar for $15,000, maybe $20,000 if you want to splurge. You get a lot of information. The dial is really well laid out. It's an incredibly, beautifully well done, beautifully finished watch for half the price of a 3940. Now, for an affordable vintage alternative to a calendar complication, I would definitely recommend the Universal Genève Tri-Compacts. Universal Genève and Patek Philippe actually share a lot of history and craftsmanship together. There's a lot of overlap there. And with these tri-compacts models, you get an annual calendar, you get a moon phase, you get really nice details, and you get a chronograph on top. These are solid gold cases with in-house movements from the 1940s. They're very underpriced at anywhere between $3,000 and $30,000, depending on which model you choose. They've only gone up in recent years, and they're just very well made, so far underappreciated watches. All right, now let's talk about chronographs. My go-to favorite Patek is the 5170, which is a more affordable Patek chronograph in that it only starts at $50,000. Luckily for us, there are affordable alternatives to Patek Philippe chronographs out there. My top recommendation is the Piguet Marine chronograph that comes in at only a third of the price at around $13,000. Now with this, you get a true dress chronograph with beautiful details, great dial layout, and a very nice movement for much less than you could get for a 5170. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more in-the-know brand in the dress chronograph category, I would definitely recommend Daniel Roth. Daniel Roth has become a darling of the collector community in the auction houses in recent years, and for good reason. His watches are very well done, excellent case architecture, wonderful in-house movements, and you get someone with history working at Audemars Piguet and Breguet before he started his own brand. The guilloche dials are very well done. There's a lot of variety and a lot of detail in there. Movements are all in-house. And in a Patek connection, you do have a double ellipse case here, which has become a signature of the brand. Prices for these Daniel Ross range anywhere between 10 and 20 for now, but because they're becoming such a darling of collectors and auction houses, those are only going to go up over time. Now that we covered the dressier categories, let's move on to alternatives for more sport Pateks, like the Aquanaut and like the Nautilus. Most people looking at Aquanauts are going to go for something like a 5167A or a 5065A, both of which are going to start around $50,000, which is kind of a lot for a stainless steel sport watch. Now, my top recommendation for Aquanaut alternatives is going to be the AP Royal Oak Offshore. You have a lot of options here as far as dial design and whether you want to go for a chronograph or a diver. They're all very capable watches with in-house movements on rubber straps, much like the Aquanaut. You get a great brand history here, and depending on which model you choose, prices could run you between 18 to 25, which compared to a $50,000 Aquanaut is not that bad. My other alternative to an Aquanaut is a bit of a cop-out, but hear me out, okay? I would recommend getting a Rolex dive watch, like a Submariner, like a Sea Dweller, and putting it on a rubber strap. There are a lot of brands out there that make rubber straps specifically for these Rolex models, so you still get that Aquanaut feel at a much lower price point. We're talking around $15,000 for a sub, for example. With these, you get a Rolex, point blank, that's very versatile. You can swap out the rubber strap for the bracelet, for a leather, for a NATO, whatever the occasion calls for. It's pure versatility, and you still get that sport diver summery effect, depending on how you dress it up. Now, the 5711 from Patek has been the talk of the town this year because it got discontinued, prices went up, and they announced their last edition of this model with a green dial earlier in 2021. If you're looking for a Nautilus on Chrono 24, one with the blue dial is going to run you at least $100,000, which not a lot of people have just lying around. That said, if you do want to jump into the stainless steel integrated bracelet sport watch category with some gentle flair, there are plenty of other options out there besides the overpriced 5711. Now, my favorite alternative, and one of my favorite watches in general, is the Bulgari Otto Finissimo. With this, you get a lot of watch in a very small package. It's about 41 millimeters in diameter, but only about 5 millimeters thick. With this, you get a lot of case architecture, a lot of angles in a small amount of space. There are a handful of different dial designs out there in different complications. They even just made the world's thinnest perpetual calendar. And with this, it comes with one of the most comfortable bracelets in the game. It's very underpriced now at about $10,000. I consider it a future classic, and I only see it going up from here. Pro tip, I would recommend bypassing the stainless steel option and going for the sandblasted titanium. It's really the watch in its purest form, and it would just be a featherweight on the wrist. The other alternative to the Nautilus is one that's been hiding in plain sight, and it is from the trilogy of watchmakers, Patek, AP, and Vacheron Constantin. The dual-time Vacheron Overseas are my personal favorite, and I only see them going up in value from here. The Overseas in general has been overlooked, or you could say hiding in plain sight, because it is such a well-known brand, but has not received nearly the acclaim that the Nautilus or the Royal Oak has. They're a steal at between $12,000 and $18,000, depending on which model you go with, but I only see them going up from here as people wake back up to the brilliance of Vacheron. So there we go. No matter what kind of Patek you're looking for, there are affordable alternatives from really great brands at lower price points. The watches in this video are just my personal favorites, but if I missed any, or if there are others on your list, be sure to drop them in the comments below. We'll have more videos coming out soon about Patek especially, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thanks for watching and enjoy your watches.